and he referred to various companies as the horns and hooves bureaus. Now that's from chapter 15 of the Golden Path. He used it as a symbol of establishments that only exist to drag money out of people and other institutions. But obviously, having used it in the speech, he expected everybody to understand. About a year ago, during the Bernie Madoff affair, I read on the Russian site an article about that affair that was entitled The Grand Strategist, which is how the authors refer to the main character, Ostap Bender. So there are many, many things. For example, the bureaucracy of the Hercules, that certainly resonates. But I think more importantly, is not even the satire, it's the character of Bender itself. The researcher at the University of Chicago, who I mentioned before, her name is Sheila Fitzpatrick, wrote an article a few years ago in which she argued that the novel probably resonates now particularly strongly because Russia has just gone through another transitional period where the country had to the country reinvented itself, and every citizen of the country had to reinvent him or herself. Since Bender reinvents himself all the time in the novel, that, according to her, resonates with many people, and I think there's a lot to it.
And I think it's more universal. I think it's not just Russia, as you said, Bernie Madoff and all of these people who have been bilking the American public out of money, or you can see them in the book.
I think all of Iceland should read it.
Right.
Well, I thought we'd open it up to questions. Does anybody want to ask a question? Yes?
How hard was it to keep it funny in translating? How many times did you say, oh, this way it just loses the sort of air out of the balloon? And did you have to do a lot of, not reinventing, but how do we tell this in a way where people are giggling through it as opposed to going, sort of cocking their head?
The dialogue was easy somehow. It was easier than the descriptive parts as far as that was concerned. I think it seemed pretty natural. Came quite naturally.
Well, what we try to do is not as much translate word by word, but translate one culture to another. So yes, we constantly kept asking ourselves, is it clear in English, and is it funny in English? And if it's not funny, what do we do to make it funny? So yes, that was a constant issue.
This happened 80 years ago. What language are you trying to speak? The English of 1931 or the English 80 years later? And does it matter?
It does matter. It does matter. I think one of the problems with the earlier translations is that the language or the humor might sound a little bit archaic to us. We are incapable of writing in the English of 1931. But more importantly, in one of the earlier discussions that Open Letter organized last year, somebody said that the works of classic should be translated anew for each new generation. So we wanted to render it in contemporary English, but at the same time, we were very wary of using anachronism. For every slang word, or every pejorative, whatever, we had to consult the dictionary to make sure it did exist back in 31 or 30. And well, you wouldn't find a single okay in the whole book, which to me sounded just too American. It's far older than 31, but we did want to render it in contemporary English.
Has the Russian language changed a lot in those 80 years, or is it pretty stable?
I remember, but it may have been yet another presentation that Open Letter had, but somebody mentioning that the Russian language hasn't changed nearly as much as other languages like English have. To me, it sounds very contemporary. I mean, I may not be familiar with certain realia, but the language doesn't sound difficult to me at all. So, yeah, it sounds as modern to me as a contemporary novel. There hasn't been much change.
I'm interested in the psychology here. What is funny in one culture and not in another? I mean, for pity's sakes, what's funny to my wife and to me is not always in agreement.
I don't think there's an answer to this. You're absolutely right. It is individual. Several friends of ours who have read the translation within the last several months referred to some paragraph, some line, some sentence that they found particularly funny that we didn't notice. Well, I mean, we remember it, we remember translating it, but to us it was no different from another paragraph. But what we tried is to convey the spirit, if you will, the linguistic spirit, the manner of speech. And then maybe we're in luck and maybe we're out of luck.
Yes?
Well, what did you think of Anno Fisher's The Little Golden Calf, and how did you feel about it coming out at the same time as The Golden Calf?
The more the merrier.
They had totally different goals. What they came up with is essentially a reader. There are 300 footnotes there. So for somebody who studies the Russian culture of the early 30s, that would be useful. Open Letter, however, has the general reading public in mind when they publish all of their works. And that's what we tried to do, and that's what we were interested in. Not a reader, but a work of literature.
Did she work from the novel as well, or did she work from the serialized version?
There's hardly any difference. I noticed there's a sentence here and there, but there's hardly any difference. So it's essentially the same.
Chad, you have a
Actually,
question?
So I know this is inside information, I guess, that at various points in time you would come across difficult things or things you would research and find that were challenges, and you found out a lot about the book and about the culture. What were some of your favorite challenges that you overcame, or were there any that you just completely stumped at? And I guess to give us a little bit more context too, there was 2 people online for a long time who were serializing or translating the book and posting it on their webpage. And at some point they stopped. And I remember you explaining that they stopped because they hit a part that there was no solution that they could have